The movies make a bigger deal out of Chani's character than the book does, and that might seem contradictory from what I just told you, but let me explain what I mean. Like J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings was thought to be unfilmable due to its world building and length, Frank Herbert's 1965 science fiction novel Dune was thought of in the same way, but for different reasons. Only recently has the book been adapted to success, and that is in large part thanks to the crew behind the two-part adaptation of the one book. Still, there were decisions that were made in the process that had a big impact on the plot lines, sequences, and characters. One reason Dune has been seen as very difficult to adapt for a long time was Herbert's decision to use inner dialogue for much of the exposition. There are entire sequences of characters just thinking to themselves. And for the movies, this is really hard to show, so that it had to either be cut completely or shown in a completely different way. As far as the story beats are concerned, these movies cover most of what we read about in the book. There were some sequences that were cut, like Dr. Yue's conversation with Lady Jessica, Duke Leto's party on Arrakis, a lot of the individual scenes with House Harkonnen, much of the Spacing Guild and Chum Company intrigue, and not to mention a 2-year time jump when Paul is on Arrakis. These cut scenes for the most part made sense, as the movies, especially Part 1, are already arguably too long, but I do have a bone to pick with something here that I will discuss in the characters section of this video. These movies did have some smart original scenes that helped the audience understand what was going on. A useful sequence they added was the opening context scene where we understand why Arrakis is a big deal, and we meet some characters sooner rather than later. However, the book begins with Reverend Mother Mohiam arriving on Caladan to test Paul with the Gom Jabbar. Director Denis Villeneuve has repeatedly said in interviews that the point of his adaptation was to show the power and sway of the Bene Gesserit sisters, and this probably explains why we're getting a series about them this early. Even though we don't see these figures very often, their work is there from beginning to end, whether in the southern tribes of Arrakis or with the lords of the great houses. An example could be how the movies decide to have Reverend Mother Mohiam be the one to encourage Emperor Carino to move against House Atreides, whereas in the book, the destruction of House Atreides is seen as just a power move by the Emperor alone. These decisions I don't think went too far, as they do help what I believe this adaptation nails. Author Frank Herbert wanted to show what happens when charismatic leaders get too much power, and he wrote his sequel, Dune Messiah, in 1969, because he felt like his readers had missed this in the original book. These movies make sure that you know that Paul Atreides is not the hero of the story. This was the movies capturing the essence of Herbert's book, especially with the decision to end Part 2 with the beginning of the Jihad, whereas in the book it ends right when Paul overcomes the Emperor at the end. The characters are a huge part of this, and there is a lot to talk about with each of them in these movies. Unfortunately, the characters of Thufir Hawat, Pieter de Vries, Liet Kynes, Count Fenring, and Emperor Carino had their presence either diminished or not there at all. I understand this mostly, but there were a few little things that I think could have been changed to make a big difference. The Baron's nephew, Feyd-Rautha, has his psychotic side emphasized for the films, and this makes him more of a vicious character. In the book, Feyd is this way, but I don't think Feyd-Rautha is not presented as being arrogant in everything he does. I don't think book Feyd ever would have said this to his uncle's face.
I ought to drown you in that tub.
He may have thought it, but he wouldn't have said it out loud. Anyway, I think the movies handled their version of the character very well, because in a lot of ways he is the main villain of Part 2. Duke Leto Atreides is probably my favorite character in the books. The movie tries to emphasize Leto's fatherly qualities, and they probably do this so that his assassination later on can hit home. And that scene where Duke Leto does go down is one of the best scenes in the movies. In the book, Leto is more formal and harsh. His image as the righteous and honorable leader is partially an act, and there's a great scene in the book where he admits to himself that he hasn't been the leader, husband, or father that he should have been. It's a great scene in a book where you have all these characters lying and cheating, being fully aware of it, but doing nothing about it. The depiction of Paul Atreides was quite good as well, besides some minor flaws. The movies show a good transition from being the passive character with everything happening to him to the active character getting things done for himself. Timothée Chalamet's performance as Paul Atreides is, I think, closer to the book in part 2, probably because they give the character more to work with. The movies do a good job at showing his hesitance to embrace the coming jihad, but also how he really wants to get revenge on House Harkonnen and the Emperor for what they've done to him, and eventually that leads him to going all in on being the Lisa Al Gaib. Chani in the movies is of course not happy about this as she leaves Paul as he becomes the next emperor. The movies make Chani into the audience point of view character. Just like her, we are going along with Paul at first, but then we distance ourselves from him when he goes too far. This is not how Chani was in the book at all. She is not a skeptic when it comes to the prophecy, as she is with Paul the entire time, and if we include the 2-year time jump, she even has a son with him, who tragically is killed off by the Sardaukar. She is frustrated at the end with Paul's decision to marry Princess Irulan, sure, but she's calmed down after some talking with Lady Jessica. This is also where I think the movies made a noticeable mistake. The movies make a bigger deal out of Chani's character than the book does, and that might seem contradictory from what I just told you, but let me explain what I mean. The movies take Paul and Chani's relationship and make it more important for the overall narrative than it is. In the book, it's an important subplot, but that's it. I believe this caused the movies, especially part 2, to miss out on other key world-building opportunities, like showing us just a little bit more of the Spacing Guild and how it works. Part 2 does, after all, begin with, the power over spice is power over all, but we don't really get to the spice's importance to the galaxy until the very end when Paul threatens to bomb the spice fields. This decision did make Chani a more complex character, which is a good thing, but it came at a cost for the story of the source material. Dune and Dune Part 2 are certainly an incredible achievement for the science fiction genre of filmmaking. After many years, we finally have a very good adaptation of Frank Herbert's original novel. Despite the unnecessary emphasis on the romance subplot, the larger points of the charismatic leader gone bad and religious fanaticism come through in a big way. These movies do indeed capture the essence of Herbert's original novel, and that is thanks to director Denis Villeneuve and his team's devotion to it. Dune and Dune Part 2 get an overall adaptation score of 8.5 out of 10. Hello everyone, welcome back to Movies with Michael. If you enjoyed this adaptation essay, you can show it by leaving a like on this video and comment down below what you think the filmmakers did right or wrong when adapting this book to the big screen. I understand that I couldn't get through everything today, but please remember to subscribe to this channel and click the notification icon to be notified about my latest videos. That's all for now, and I'll see you all next time.